Awake, warriors awake, Juve morning come. Juve, Abaluba yeah, yeah, Abaluba yeah, yeah, Abaluba. King, gang, 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 gang is Juve. King, gang, 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 gang is Juve. Spirit rise, come to touch the sun. Darkness pass and the morning come. We done pay homage to we ancestors. We done do the ritual for the libation. So we call in the warriors to stand on guard to protect and preserve this tradition. As we fill each heart, every hollow drum with love. Awake, warriors awake, Juve morning come. You rhythm go turn you round. The warriors coming down. Awake, warriors awake, Juve morning come. You rhythm go turn you round. The warriors coming down. King, gang, 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 gang is Juve. King, gang, 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 gang is Juve. Iron and steel set ablaze to the dawn. No reason to shelter or run from the storm. The drum call anointing every move we make. The rhythm commanding blood and mind to awake. You can't help
On this week's episode of the Bubb Report, we take a
stumble, not one must fall. Unmasking the spirit from one from all with love. Awake, warriors awake, Juve morning come. The rhythm go turn you round. The warriors coming down. Awake, warriors awake, Juve morning come.
On this week's episode of the Bubb Report, we take a deep dive into what was a historic week in the Caribbean region. Not since the assassination of Maurice Bishop in Grenada in 1983 have we witnessed the murder of a sitting head of government. 53-year-old Jovenel Moïse's assassination sent shockwaves throughout the Haitian community, as well as throughout the region, with swift reaction from CARICOM heads of governments.
Got to the president residence house. They pretend that they are DA, Drug Enforcement Agency, but they are not. They actually killed the president, but most of them were speaking Spanish, some were speaking English. We are gathering information, and we know some of them are still in the country.
A Haitian police spokesman described the brazen 1 a.m. assassination on Wednesday, July 7th as one that was carried out with precision by foreign mercenaries as well as Haitian-American mercenaries. The assailants were said to have tied up the president's guards, his housekeepers and butlers. They then proceeded to shoot the president more than 12 times with high-caliber bullets, one of which was a direct gunshot wound to the head. The Haitian police spokesman stated further that his eyes were gouged out. The president's wife and Haitian First Lady survived the incident after being flown out to Miami, Florida for treatment. Today on the report, we speak with two Haitian Americans about the significance of last week's events. the political turmoil that led up to the July 7th tragedy, as well as the political future of Haiti, as conflicting parties from rival political parties jostle to determine who succeeds the late president in the absence of a clear plan of succession.
Jovenel has to leave the country. He said he would feed the population, that he would put food on people's plates and some money in our pockets. But ever since he's been in power, he's just been lying to us.
Also on the report, we discussed the state of travel and tourism in Grenada as the island nation prepares to welcome back international visitors, including students at the St. George's University en masse, and as the cruise ship tourism season is expected to have a soft reboot for this year's winter season. During the last year, the badly hit tourism sector in Grenada has been retooling its approach to the business model of tourism by offering new travel incentives, the creation of a new school for tourism hospitality, the appointment of a new CEO at the authority, and the rapid construction of luxury hotel developments in La Sagesse, Livera, and Mount Hartman, respectively.
There are many people that haven't worked in over a year. It means that there are many people who would have had a regular monthly salary for years, who over the last year have not been able to have even 1 month's paycheck.
In 2019, tourism accounted for over 40% of our country's GDP. I truly believe that in 2022, we will surpass that.
On the other hand, the anticipated return of visitors to the island has also created tensions between hotel workers and their employers over vaccination mandates, which workers say is unconstitutional. But first up, we pay tributes to Jude Natty Nuclear Dread Henry, a musical son of St. David's, who died on July 10th in Grenada. Henry represented the old god of Calypso on the island and participated in several Calypso competitions in the 80s and 90s. His musical legacy also lives on in his son, Little Natty, a Grenadian cultural ambassador and soca artist.
Take your time and ride me nice. Ride me sweet. Take your time. Take your time and ride me. Lord, I feel it. When you change the gear, Lord, my feet in the air. When you jump the brake, Lord, my whole body shake.
We welcome our guests, Calypsonian Finley Scholar Jeffrey, tourism consultant Natalie Talmo, Grenada's tourism minister Dr. Clarice Modeste Kerwin, Jerry Rappaport of the Grenada Hotel and Tourism Association, tourism stakeholder Dexter Yaching, and the trade unionist George Mason. Here to unpack the Haitian crisis are Haitian-American investigative journalist Cyrus Sibert and Professor Dr. Mamira Prosper. It's the week of July 11th, 2021, and this is the Bubb Report. A pleasant good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, or whatever time you are choosing to view the Bubb Report. We thank you for joining us, and certainly this will be a very packed show, so we really want to get to the business of the show. But before we start this week, I think it would be important for me to begin by making some observations with respect to the parliamentary sitting that occurred in Grenada last week. Now, as the debate on COVID vaccination rages on the island, we here at the Bubb Report couldn't help but take notice of the Minister of Health's ominous prediction that Grenadians will die if calls are not heeded by the national community to be inoculated against the highly contagious COVID-19 virus. While Grenada must be complimented for its handling of the pandemic so far in the protection of lives and its continued efforts to keep infection and hospitalization rates low, we believe that using fair appeals as a persuasion tactic, in our view, is not a helpful way of encouraging increased vaccination rates. We believe fair appeals, also known as scare tactics, have been widely used to promote recommended preventive behaviors in public health. We contend that unintended negative outcomes can result from fair appeals that intensify the already complex pandemic and efforts to contain it. We encourage public health professionals to reevaluate their desire to use fair appeals in COVID 19 health communication and recommend that evidence based health communication be utilized to address the needs of the specific national community in Grenada, help people understand what they're being asked to do, explain step by step how to complete preventative behaviors, and consider external factors needed to support the uptake of behaviors. This isn't to say that the Ministry of Health in Grenada has not done so. In fact, they must also be complimented for their public outreach efforts with respect to facilitating COVID messaging and encouraging vaccination on the island. Also, we wish to compliment the MP for St. Patrick West, the Honorable Anthony Boson, for his pronouncements in Parliament on Friday with respect to ways in which the state should facilitate cultural activities in the 2021 Carnival season, in the absence of an official Carnival celebration. Some said that the St. Patrick West MP vindicated himself from pronouncements made in last year's sitting of Parliament, in which masqueraders from his constituency were framed as demons for their defiance of COVID-19 protocols. And on this note, I would like to welcome my first two guests here. I have Dr. Mamira Prosper, as well as Mr. Cyrus Sibbert, who is an investigative journalist. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the Bubb Report. We want to get to it to discuss the Haitian crisis with you. Dr. Prosper, you're actually in Port-au-Prince. And so
Yes.
Can you give us a sense of what is happening on the ground there at the moment?
Absolutely. So first, thank you so much for inviting me. And I just wanted to say this before I begin speaking, the comparison
Yes.
between a Morris Bishop and a Jovenel Moïse in terms of head of state that was assassinated while in power. I wouldn't even have dared put them together in the same sentence. Jovenel
Okay.
Moïse has been a dictator, and I think your segment does that work later on to show the kind of popular resistance that there was against Jovenel. So he very much was a dictator and not someone who even had a popular mandate, actually. I hope that we can get a little bit into that. The
Correct.
elections. Yes,
We will be
I just
unpacking
wanted
that.
to say that, right?
No,
Morris Bishop to
it
me,
it
right?
is important, correct, but it is important
Yes.
to understand these basic facts of history.
Absolutely.
I was merely highlighting basic facts
Yes.
of history.
Yes,
Now,
understood.
with respect to the merits of the popularity of Maurice, certainly
Yes.
cannot be compared
Yes.
with Maurice. Maurice led a
Absolutely.
popular movement in Grenada. So
I would be
certainly
remiss not to say it because I have great respect for the memory of and the
of
work.
Maurice Bishop.
Yes, yes. So I just wanted to start out by saying that.
Absolutely. Cyrus,
Yeah, I think
please.
that I don't share the same view of Dr. Prosper. I don't think because there is a way to the definition of dictatorship and is clear, and also I think that someone cannot you can't be against someone, but you don't need to assassinate him a second time. Assassinate his character, things like that.
I
He was an
disagree.
elect-
I think that
well,
we can't
he-
get caught up
he was-
in
he
the
was-
assassination and not
Yes,
say
okay.
what he was.
All right. Yes,
Let me finish.
yes,
He was
Mr.
an
Sibbert,
elected
please.
president. He was an elected president. He went to the election in 2015, and the opposition said that the election was corrupted, the election was fraudulent, and they put another government with an opposition president, a new electoral council, and they redo the election, and Jovenel Moïse won the election in the second time, and he won it at the first step, first stage.
Okay, yes. Mr.
Cannot,
Sibbert, thank you. Oh,
you cannot just say he wasn't
Mr. Sibbert, I
elected. He wasn't.
disagree.
yeah.
There are
Okay.
international observers and national observers who both the 2015 and 2016 elections proved that there were extreme fraud that led to Jovenel going from third place in 2015 to first in 2016. And 44% of those votes were cast by untraceable votes, what they've come to call the zombie vote.
All right.
So
yes,
he actually never had a popular
panel,
mandate.
Panel, I will take
Kellon,
control of the panel. No. I will take control of the panel
Please
right
do.
now.
No,
So,
Mr. Kellon, not in 2016. Not in
Yeah.
2016. They said that
Okay,
in
as I said-
2015, they win the election in 2015, and all the observers said the election was great, was good.
All of
and
the
the
observers,
opposition,
both reports
Okay.
claim otherwise.
all right. Okay, Dr.
opposition
Prosper.
was to repeat- was to
Dr.
repeat
Prosper,
what they said.
Dr. Prosper, so I will get to you now. With respect to the conditions on the ground in Haiti, can you give us a sense of what is happening now? We know that there is an international investigation on the foot to determine who these perpetrators were. So I know you are in Port-au-Prince, so could you give us a sense of what is happening on the ground in the country at the moment?
Absolutely. Well, since the assassination of the U.S. imposed president of Haiti, and Mr. Sibbert, I'm sure, will disagree with that perspective. There definitely has been a state of siege that was declared by, at that time, the prime minister, who was supposed to be stepping down and be replaced by another named prime minister. So there's already contention for who should be the person to have replaced the president. And we can get into that, and I'm sure Mr. Sibbert can offer more clarification. But essentially, the state of siege has been declared for 15 days, and essentially was to be able to privilege an investigation into the assassination. So Port-au-Prince and the feel of it is very different than what folks are experiencing in Cap Haitian or other cities. And actually, in Fort Liberté, there are videos circulating. People actually celebrated the death of Jovenel. So it's not about assassinating his character once he's dead, but someone being dead doesn't absolve them from wrongdoing. Someone being dead doesn't absolve them from their responsibility. And actually, his death really was foreshadowed by the way he was ruling. So in Port-au-Prince, it's pretty quiet. The streets are pretty quiet. Some of that also is related to a gas shortage that we're experiencing. So even the weeks before the assassination, the streets were a lot less populated. Also, we're having a COVID spike. So all of these factors have contributed to the low circulation of people in the city, but certainly the state of siege is yet another factor that's having folks in Port-au-Prince stay home. But the biggest one, right, remains insecurity, right? And we can say that the assassination of the president is an extension of this insecurity. But just earlier this month, about 150 people total were massacred, right? Between the gang warfare in Martissan, which is on the main national road that leads from the capital to the south, to one that happened just about 7 days before the assassination of the president. People have been feeling extremely under a lot of stress, right, about circulating even during the daytime. So all of those factors are contributing to the streets of Port-au-Prince being, pretty empty. And it's not simply because of the state of siege, right? That's just sort of an added factor to the sentiments that folks were already experiencing in the space, which is one of terror, right? To say that President Jovenel Moïse, de facto President Jovenel Moïse, was not a dictator, I mean, dictatorship in the 21st century doesn't look like what it did, right, during the Cold War. But certainly that one single person was ruling by decree since January 2020 without any kind of checks and balances. I'm not sure what else we could qualify that type of rule as, right? That one person could come to stand in for 12 million people. And this said person who supposedly won elections without, fraud has been protested since the very beginning. And I am someone who studies social movements. The qualification of, the way that the Haitian media and the US media or the international media has portrayed the struggle on the ground as one led by the opposition really obscures the fact that people are coming out, right, who belong to organizations, who belong to collective organizations, who belong to mass-based organizations, not simply puppets of the opposition. I have participated in the protests personally, not only as somebody documenting, but somebody who represents the diaspora, right, who had something to say about this particular party in power squandering billions of dollars of the state. So I think it's really, I believe, poor analysis to simply say it's the opposition that's leading any kind of resistance against not just Jovenel Moïse, but his entire party. People on the ground, I can cite several groups, and I will lift one up here, Molegaf, which is a community organization that belongs to several popular neighborhoods in Port-au-Prince, right? The ones we are used to hearing in the media, right? Cité Soleil, Bel Air. These folks have been taken to the streets. They're not controlled by the opposition. They understand themselves very much as leftist revolutionaries, right? So to qualify the resistance of people to Jovenel Moïse's supposed third place in 2015 and bumped up to first place in 2016, right? I think is really a poor way of looking at what actually happened. Yes, opposition is given the mic, right? This is not exceptional to Haiti. Political figures, politicians always get, right, asked first what they think. We don't typically go door knocking at the people's homes to ask them what they think, right? Social movements are typically not given the mic, especially when they have very extremely critical positions about, right, the power structure. I'm not defending the opposition at all. I think a whole bunch of them are also crooks, right? They've all been named in several scandals as well. So it's not about defending the opposition against elites. It's about defending the social movements who carry a much more profound message than the opposition against this particular party.
Yeah, so let me bring in Mr. Sibbert. What I love about the Bubb Report is that we bring that balance to the program. And so without any filibustering or interruptions, Mr. Sibbert, I will give you a chance to respond to some of the perspectives that Dr. Prosper shares. And obviously, you come from it from a different worldview, and so we would want to entertain that worldview now, Mr. Sibbert.
Yeah, Mr. Kellen, what happened? What happened is the traditional situation of Haiti. This is a racist and discrimination system in Haiti, where you have the elite, the rich people and intellectual people, the elite who doesn't like, who don't like poor people, who don't like normal people from the countryside, who has been elected and to govern the country and to implement what they offer and what they propose to the Haitian people who elected them. You had this situation on Aristide in 1991. He was elected, he took power, and after 7 months, you have an opposition against him. That the same thing happened to Jovenel Moïse. He was elected 2 times, and he was, he took power in February 2017, and 7 months after, in September, he has an opposition and demonstration against him with all kind of accusation, they pay all kind of public relation company in the United States and Europe to assassinate his character, and finally they assassinate him. The same thing happened to Toussaint Louverture, who was a black man from a slave, and then when he has the responsibility to govern the colony of Saint-Domingue, the light-skinned people and the soft who think that they are too smart, they are too light skinned to let someone poor from the countryside to govern them. And in 1799, that give us the first civil war between the black and the light skinned the Mato, who is Wigo. What happened to Jovenel Moïse? Jovenel Moïse has a program. proposed agriculture. He proposed to make to take, because in Haiti you have 70% of the budget concentrate in the capital, and all the country, all other part of the country doesn't have anything from the budget. They
But
concentrate.
Mr. Sibbert,
Let me finish. They
yes, go ahead.
concentrate 60 to 70% of the resources in the capital. And then now, when a president come and say that I'm going to do agriculture, I want to do irrigation, I want to do those things. Now start the fight between him and the elite, those corrupted elite who keep the country under control for 2 centuries and to assassinate his character and assassinate everything. Okay, what happened? Say that he is a dictator, but someone who is a dictator, you still have radio station in the country. Me, I knew a dictatorship. People knew dictatorship, Duvalier. But you still have radio station. They say anything they want. You still have demonstration. She just told you that she demonstrate against Jovenel Moïse. And they spent 4 years demonstrating against him, ask him to resign. Haitians need to understand that if someone go to election and then the people vote for him, even he's a black man, even he's a poor guy, even he's from countryside, even he's a farmer, even he's a peasant, you need to respect him and let him govern, because this is what is democracy. In the past, they used to use the army to make coup d'etat, and now they are using other way like character assassination, social media, all those things to make the coup d'etat. And you can see it. Why you have a president who is dead? Why all the country? You can see that Haitian people go on the street to find the Colombian who killed the president. And now she just told you that Haitians are celebrate. Did you see celebration? Where did you see celebration? People were on the street fighting the Colombian, helping the Haitian police to fight the Colombian, because the majority of Haitian people understand that this is against their strategy, just to let foreign people come in their country to kill their president. And that can happen to any small state in the Caribbean where you have fight between the government and rich people and the elite. This is
Okay,
the situation.
all right, Mr. Sibbert. So what we want to do now, because we have to get to the next segment quickly, we want to have a
Yes.
conversation about where does Haiti go from here? Because as I said before, there is some context to this. This was not a random event, right? There were a series of events that led up to this, and I think that tends to be missing in the broader narrative. And so my final question I would pose to both of you is, and I would start with you, Dr. Prosper, where does Haiti go from here? There appears to be some concerns with respect to line of succession, with respect to what the Constitution says about that line of succession, but also with respect to the other forces, whether those are neoliberal forces, whether that is elitist forces in the country. So where do we go from here? There's supposed to be an election also in September. So what happens now? And I will start with you, Dr. Prosper, and get to Mrs. Sibbert.
Am I allowed to say one thing?
Go ahead.
Jovenel Moïse, right? While he was promoting a Black nationalist discourse, much like Duvalier, was also making deals, for example, on February 8th, to turn several thousand hectares of land into a plantation to produce stevia for the production of sweeteners for Coca-Cola. He handed for free and also subsidized with $18 million of the state to an oligarch, right, to these light-skinned bourgeois that Mr. Sibbert is bringing up. So if Jovenel Moïse was really, right, this Black messiah, then why would he continue to prop up a segment of this light-skinned oligarchy that Sibbert is claiming, right, had unanimously, right, contributed to the assassination of this president? I think I would be remiss not to bring that up, right? That this just happened this February 2021. Thousands of hectares of land that, by the way, were protected agricultural lands that are not producing food for Haitians to consume. They're producing non-edible crops, stevia, which you cannot eat, to make sweetener for Coca-Cola, so multinational companies. And Jovenel Moïse may have had some differences with certain key oligarchs, like a Boulos, for example, right? But he was also paving the way for another type of oligarch to be able to continue to consolidate power. By the way, this particular oligarch who's been given thousands of acres of agricultural lands, and remember Mr. Sibbert said that he was concerned about agriculture, right? This is the same person who was at the head of a movement against Aristide in 2004, right? And so we can get into the conversations about, you know, the succession order, and Mrs. Sibbert may be better placed since he seems to be closer to the power structure than I about who will come to have power. But one thing we know, and speaking to your point, Mr. Bubb, about neoliberals, whether it's Claude Joseph, whether it's Joseph Lambert, whether it's Ariel Henry, they are all very much in line with the project of the US, right? Jovenel Moïse, what he's claiming, right, cared about Haitian sovereignty, was much more amenable to sitting with the core group, right, which includes the US Embassy, the Canadian Embassy, the French Embassy, the OAS, right? All of these different foreign folks, and was taking directions from them. Actually, one of the first signs of protest against him once he became president was actually 3 years before this assassination, on the same date in 2018, when people shut down the country because he was willing to take the dictates of the IMF to raise taxes on fuel prices, right? So again, the idea that Jovenel Moïse was like some kind of black messiah who was going to usher in Haitian sovereignty is absolutely incorrect. The Haitian state has been in the hands of the international much more nakedly since 2004. Right, when the core group sits in the middle of, right, sits at the table with the state in ways that the so-called Haitian people that Sibbert is claiming that Jovenel represented, right, didn't get a chance. And again, we're going to see in this moment that the same types of people who want to open Haiti up for business, who want to allow the multinationals to be able to own land here. And one of the things that Jovenel Moïse was doing is attempting to change the constitution of Haiti, which obviously is not perfect, but in order to further liberalize the political structure, further liberalize the economy, and allow non-Haitian nationals not only to own land, but come to hold political positions to determine what happens in the country. So I'm still waiting for the part where we're going to use Jovenel's roots, right, to present him as a people's person, as a people's candidate, when in fact he wasn't working for the people. That he took agricultural lands and turned it into plantations that don't produce food, and certainly not for the Haitian people. So I just wanted, it wouldn't make sense not to say this, right? As Sibbert is trying to portray him as as a man of the people. Now the succession, there's a tension. There are 3 people who are vying for power. None of them really care about the Haitian people. All of them are in bed with one or another oligarch. And all of them will take their dictates from the core group, from the IMF, from the World Bank, from the OAS, from the UN, from the US. They were not going to usher in any kind of program that is actually going to lead to Haitian people really having a government that represents them. When Sibbert says that Jovenel represented the Haitian people, then you're saying that you accept the fact that one person without any checks and balances in any kind of way can come to really have a people's program that he single-handedly is going to usher in, right? That's a problem if we think that that's actually democracy. In all countries of the world, we applaud parliamentary debate, and we see that as a sign of democracy. But for Haiti, we have one person who makes all decisions while he sits around at a table with international folks, and we call that democracy? I think that that's absolutely, absolutely absurd. And hiding behind a black nationalist discourse to whitewash Jovenel Moïse's image, I just can't sit here and let that happen, right? I think that that's a little bit, that's propaganda. And as far as the elections, people on the ground have been saying that the way that things are with gangs, 95, and Jovenel claimed that he was able to break up 22 of them or 60 of them and 22 were left, whatever it is, right? But that gangs control the Port-au-Prince metropolitan area, which, by the way, is the area that votes the most in elections, right? They are the ones who come out the most. They are the ones who are mostly courted. About 1/3 of the entire population in Haiti lives in the metropolitan area of the capital. So what does it mean when the territory where people are most likely to vote is controlled by gangs, and we think that we're going to have fair and free elections in Haiti? I think that that's actually a joke. And this is exactly the project that this government was pushing forth, while people were saying the situation is too insecure for us to think that we're scared to go out to the supermarket. We're scared to go out to our jobs, let alone show up to vote. And that's the real feeling of what's happening in Haiti, that people, especially in Port-au-Prince, are scared. And yes, and I can share the videos with you if you want, Bubb, to show that, yes, in some parts of the country, people celebrated. And actually in Port-au-Prince, people didn't even say anything. People were much more responsive to the soccer game between Argentina and Brazil last night than they were to Jovenel Moïse's assassination. And the folks who went to try to get the mercenaries, quote unquote, out of the jail, it's just another ploy to take away, to say it's international intervention. At the same time that Claude Joseph says, we want the US to come and occupy us, right? We want the US to send in troops, but somehow the same people who are claiming they want the US and the UN to invade are the same ones saying that this was international intervention that killed our president. I find that these are very contradictory positions, right? And the folks who went to try to pull the mercenaries out are probably paid, but are a very small segment of the population versus, right, the majority of the people. I was earlier in June traveling all across the north of Haiti, precisely visiting these thousands of acres that Jovenel Moïse gave to the light-skinned oligarch, André Aped, and everywhere it was clear that the sentiment was that we are done with Jovenel. So
Okay.
I don't know where
So-
Sibert is getting his information from, but it's not the
certainly,
one I have.
as I said, well, of course, it goes to different lived experiences. So, Dr. Prosper, thank you, and I'll get to Mr. Sibert. Mr. Sibert, I'm going to give you a chance because we have to get to the next segment. But, Mr. Sibert, again, thank you for both of you for appearing on the report. We needed to get that perspective. So, Mr. Sibert, it's your turn.
Yes. The land she was talking about, named Savandian, is a land where drug dealer, drug trafficker used to land cocaine in Haiti. Because those land, never use, there is no agriculture, there is nothing on this land. You did a good thing today when you have me and some another person, because just to balance those information. In Haiti, the Catholic Church and the bourgeoisie own all the land, and the state own all the land. And you have many land with nothing. And this land she was talking about is named Savandian, and this is a land who used to be used by the drug dealer because to have a plane from Colombia, from South America with drugs in it. The other thing is she might have, for example, she explained issue that she's not agree with Jovenel. I'm okay, it's not a problem. People can have issue, but that doesn't justify to assassinate the president in his house. The other thing, when she said that she's talking about government, the Constitution in its Article 149 said the government in place need to take power and organize election. Now you have the government in place is Claude Joseph, and he has the Constitution. It's easy. She could have a Constitution and just read the Article 149. And also, you see that she explained that election is not possible. Why you had election in Iraq, you had election in Afghanistan, you had election in many other countries, and many other violent countries. Why not election in Haiti? It's because the elite and the rich people think that election is a threat for them, because election give the poor people, the black majority people, the possibility to vote someone to represent them, and they don't like that. They don't like that. In Haiti, we have a long story of those elite people fighting elected president, elected government. Then they have to respect that. If we need to have stability in Haiti, people, those elite, those rich people, those people those intellectual people, they need to understand that we have a democracy. We are not in the colonial situation before 18 with French. Even they are light skinned, even they are white people, even they are rich, even they are smart. They need to respect the majority. If the people vote for someone, you need to respect it. You cannot kill him and now trying to explain that it was bad, killing him was a good thing. We need to stop this thing. We need to stop this thing in Haiti. This is the arrogant situation of the elite who don't respect the peasant, who don't respect poor people. They are discriminating against us because we are black, because we are poor, because we are poor, and because we are from the countryside. Then they are in the capital and the Port-au-Prince. They think that they deserve the power, they deserve all the resources, and then when the poor people, when the Haitian people elect someone, they start a campaign of different propaganda to assassinate his character, and after acting. For example, she's talking about gang story. Haiti has gang since 1994. After President Aristide, they mobilized the U.S., the Haitian army. And after that, you have a vacuum with all the same thing the United States did in Iraq. They demobilized the Iraqi army, and after the Iraqi army became a guerrilla. You have the same thing in Haiti. And also, the gang situation is not only in Haiti. You have the gang situation in Honduras and Salvador. This is a situation. And also, all those gangs, they are coming from the United States. And also, you can see that with the mercenaries acting in Haiti to kill the president. You might have gang from, you might have group from Latin America or Central America, to kill people, making kidnapping, just to killing the assassination of president and say, yes, he's responsible. Why? Because when he come onto power, the president attacked, he canceled many contracts, electricity contract.
Okay, Mr. Sibbert, yes, we have to.
No, yes, I'm going to finish.
We have to get to the next segment. So 30 seconds. Just give us a quick summary. Okay. That's okay. We need to get to the second segment, please.
Yeah, I say the contract. He canceled contract with which people, the oligarch, about electricity. He canceled contract with the oligarch about petrol, gas. Then they consider Haiti as a new colony. This is their colony of the elite and the small rich people, and all the Haitians need to stay in poverty, and they don't respect people, the poor people vote. That's why when you ask them what is the solution, they will never tell you election. I think that
all right, Mr.
Haiti
Sibbert,
need election, and we need international investigation on this matter.
Correct.
Because that needs to be stopped. Thank you.
Mr. Sibbert and Dr. Prosper, thank you so much. This was certainly an all sides discussion. We will continue to follow and watch this space with respect to the Haitian political crisis. And one of the observations that I also wish to make, international media tends to frame Haiti as the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. Now, statistically, that may be so, but I wish in the framing on Haiti that it would also be framed as the first Black republic, because it's also the first Black republic, and that should be a point of pride for all people of African descent in the African diaspora. So Dr. Prosper and Dr. Sibbert, thank you again. We are about to get to the next segment. Let's take a break, folks. We'll be back with our panel on Tourism. Stand by.
So it's not a legal schooling. I know you're sensitive to people schooling you on the law, but I think I can trump you when it comes to the history of Grenada.
What you're saying is that this resignation was expected? Would it be fair to say that you abdicated your responsibility by not showing up in Parliament on Friday?
We are not aware of the terms of the agreement.
But then how can you say the terms are not favorable? You don't know the terms.
We love old talk, we love gossip, we love brango, we love all them kind of things in the Caribbean.
If I cannot play music, I don't know how I'm gonna live.
We are borrowing money to pay debt because of corruption, waste, and mismanagement.
That they have difficulty with your leadership. Why then are you contesting the presidency? You've said... Thank you, folks, for staying with us. This was certainly the first segment. Got a little bit heated there, but it's good to get that both sides perspective with respect to what is happening on the ground in Haiti. And I think it's important that we get that perspective from Haitians because it is their lived experiences. And that is also important. But at this time, I wish to welcome the panel on tourism. I'm happy to be joined by the Minister of Tourism, Dr. Clarisse Modeste Cohen, who is also the Member of Parliament for Saint Mark. Saint Mark. This is her second appearance on the Bubb Report. George Mason, who represents a lot of hotel sector workers in Grenada. Mr. Natalie Talmo, who is a tourism consultant. We also welcome him, as well as Jerry Rappaport of the Grenada Hotel and Tourism Association, and Mr. Dexter Yoshing, who is also a tourism stakeholder. And so we want to get into it first. I will begin with you, Dr. Modeste. Dr. Modeste, you would agree that this is a very turbulent period for the tourism sector in Grenada. But over the last year, your government has engaged in a lot of retooling activities, if you will, so that when the tourism sector, the floodgates of the tourism sector is finally open, that you can have things in place to ensure that the tourism sector gets on the rebound that Grenada expects. And so my first question to you is, how would you assess your efforts in getting Grenada back to its footing with respect to tourism?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bob, and good day, morning, or afternoon, whichever time it is, to all of your listeners and to my fellow panelists on your platform. Yes, we did do a lot of work. After we recovered from the initial shock of the COVID. A number of initiatives have been taken, but I just want to take a second off to really single out the Ministry of Health and the sterling work they have done in making the appropriate decisions and making them in the appropriate time so that our statistics show for themselves that Grenada has done tremendously well in terms of curbing the spread of the infection of COVID-19 and curbing it in general. So keeping it out, and also whenever there was a small outbreak or a small spread anywhere, to deal with it effectively and efficiently so that our numbers are pretty good, I must say, and we're proud of how we have done that. In the tourism sector, all would recognize that tourism has been hardest hit, maybe the earliest hit, and probably the last industry to recover. We're still in the doldrums, but we realized that we could not let a crisis, we could not waste a crisis, and therefore a number of things were, we engaged in a number of activities. So one of them had to be training. The first training would have been to train people how to deal with COVID, to operate in a COVID time, because we are well aware that while we would love to wake up one morning and hear that there's no COVID, it is not done yet with us, and it's going to take a while. So every sector was trained in terms of all of the protocols, the necessary protocols that were required. We encouraged digitization of certain services, whether it be through the Ministry of Health and persons making the applications, but also the front desk interactions and so on, and the checking ins and the checking out, we realized that they could be done very effectively digitally and minimize the contact. In addition to that, we realized that it was a good time for us to investigate where we are and see what we didn't do so well and what we could do better, and also to avail ourselves to the information in terms of surveys that were done, whether it's locally, regionally, or internationally, as to what people wanted, and to place ourselves there strategically to do that. So we've been learning, and even before COVID, we've been pressing towards community development, community interaction, and we're learning more and more that people want that kind of community interaction. That doesn't mean that they won't love grand dance. I mean, who would not love grand dance? People would love that. They would still want to go to Grenadian, but they want to see something added, a spice added to the Grenadian. So Grenadian, we have the shoreline trail, and we have identified a number of other trails because we know that the tourists want, while they want the soft adventure, they want a range. So we have varying degrees of, how shall I say, varying degrees of challenge in trails just around Grenadian and Grenadian to Concord Waterfalls. There are quite a bit of it. And we have been finding out quite a number of waterfalls in our little Trial Island state. So in St. Mark, you have Rainbow Falls, and people are rediscovering the Tufton Hall waterfalls and a number of other warm springs and so on. In St. Andrews, you have the, what is it? There's another waterfall. It's not Rainbow. Rainbow is ours. It will come. But
yes, I believe there is also one up there. I think I
yes,
know it's one of the new falls. Yes,
and it has attracted, I must say, quite a lot of attention. So we're looking at these new attractions, but we're also improving on what we had before. You would recall that our underwater sculptures were the first in the world, built by one of our foreign friends, Jason. And we, first of all, we have to upgrade what is there, because over time, the weather and the sea would have deteriorated the structures a bit. And we're doing some new ones which reflect more of our local culture. So there's going to be shortney. There's going to be something that depicts the Carib's Leap story. It's going to be told there as well. So a few of our local history and culture is going to be put down there. We're also working with World Bank for our very famous Fort George. And we have a major project there. I realize time does not allow me to go into details, but some serious refurbishment will be done. And also we have launched a 5-year national strategic plan for the tourism sector. So these are some of the things we've been doing. If there's time, I can say more, but
absolutely. And then what I want to do now, Mr. Talmo, I want to bring you in here, and then I'll get to Jerry. But Mr. Talmo, in assessing where Grenada is now, because as the minister said in our opening intro, Grenada does depend heavily on tourism. And as you would appreciate in this period, there's been significant downturn in the sector. With respect to when Grenada decides to reopen, how would you assess those reopening plans?
Well, first of all, good morning, and thank you for the invite to your space. Well, before going into how, or perhaps assess how we want to reopen, which is something that is probably part of the discussion, I've been listening to Dr. Clarice Modeste-Cohen about the plans or the new falls or trails that Grenada has to offer, which is beautiful. Matter of fact, is your national asset, your nature, your falls, your trails, your beaches, your nature, And I like the fact that you call it a sector. Tourism is part of an economic sector, which is really, really important. Matter of fact, is the third economic sector, part of the 5 economic sector that will keep any economy sustainable. My point is that in my 10 years in Grenada, or analysis of Grenada, I always see an island that had a massive potential where you think you had a liability. From my viewpoint, it's always been an asset. So we starting from 10 years ago with a sort of a lack of rooms, going to today where we do have those upcoming rooms. The bottom line is that I'm wondering if Grenada is aware of the richful and resourceful product that she's sitting upon. Therefore, it's nice to go to the waterfalls, it's nice to go to the beach, but when we go back to our hotels, our receptions, are we getting the experience? Are we getting the hospitality experience? Are we bringing home, you know, all of those factors that make our holidays, that make the tourism really, really important? I'm glad the fact that we don't want to waste a crisis, because crisis, it seems to me that they've always been there. It could be seen as an opportunity, and I'm also glad that staff is going to be trained. What it surprised me that it might be trained now more on like COVID and digitalization, while we could invest more in training in what is the hospitality as a whole, making a product much stronger and much more appealing to the public out there that not necessarily is looking for this sort of a mass tourism as is being developed up on the northern islands, such as Antigua, St. Lucia, perhaps St. Barth, St. Martin. I've been in the islands about 30 years, and I retired 3 years ago, simply because it was becoming very difficult to engage and try to build any project because of the lack of knowledge of the sector within the industry. So what I could assess my personal viewpoint of Grenada, that yes, is important to put emphasis and effort on having the tourism sector starting again. But I also think it's been COVID a good opportunity to have everybody to stop a second and thinking if we are going into the right direction in picking up our clients and offering our clients, our tourists, the product that they are looking for. Just briefly, going back on what I heard, the underwater sculpture park, yes, it was the first one in the world, but how it became to be now no longer attractive, as we just gave the idea to some other country who made a more attractive underwater sculpture park. And it seems
But
like
that does not take away from the fact that it's the first in the world, right? You have
absolutely.
you have to give
the
the sculptors credit for choosing Grenada to be that place where they laid it down.
And that is awesome. I'm just wondering why we need to wait for such a catalytic event to now maintain and make the underwater sculpture park even more attractive, while it could be every year, since it's there every year at certain time on the anniversary. Perhaps I'm throwing things in the air every year. A new artist could have dropped down a sculpture. So let's say if it's been opened the 1st of September, every 1st of September we have a new sculpture. I'm just throwing stuff in the air. Brainstorming is the most beautiful thing we can do when it's time to prepare a product. And once we have a product, we should be able to educate the people that will make the product. And once we have those two items together, we then can go out there and sell the product. Sometimes it seems to me that Grenada wants to go and play a strong football game without the players. With the lack of professional in the industry, it will make difficult to then create even super luxury environment if we then need to rely on the perhaps owner of that said luxury environment to build their own, so to speak, made to custom professionals. While we, or as an island, we could build our own professionals, teaching what is hospitality, what is service industry, what is exactly catering. I was talking to a friend recently where I was comparing the importance that I believe many people no longer give to hospitality and catering as if we allow anybody to go beyond our counters. We allow anybody to go beyond our kitchen, starting to clean up a little dish or wash up a little table without passing on any knowledge. And those persons, they gaining knowledge along the way, and they becoming, calling themselves chef, preparing food that we put in people's body. And that's what I said, is everything is nice, but before going out and tackle this customer, it'd be nice if we have prepared a comprehensive package made out of hospitality, receptions, hotels, restaurants, professionals, and as the minister's fairly said, a lovely package of soft adventures. Another thing, if you don't mind me adding, is once you have all of these, I perhaps would take this big stop opportunity to go and explore our regional markets, because, like I said, having had link and contacts all over the islands, I'm pretty sure that there is a much closer segment of people that we can reach and have this inter-island exchange of knowledge and culture, because I'm pretty sure that a lot of people from Grenada, they never seen another Caribbean island. Therefore, it's going to be very difficult to compare Dominica with St. Lucia, with Montserrat, with Guadalupe, and so on and so forth. And having had the follow through what has been done before with the success on the case study, that's what I said. It's good to open, it's good to put effort into the tourism, but personally, like I said, I would take this stop opportunity to re-explore our primary financial sector, which is the search of raw material, the secondary financial sector, which is the manufacturing of those materials, the third sector, which is like the sale of those materials. And then we can talk about banking, marketing, and so on and so forth. So that is personally what I
all right, and let me bring in Jerry. Jerry, good day to you again. Welcome back to the report. You were here last year, just on the heels of the again the downturn of the tourism economy. And on your last appearance, you did make some salient points, Mr. Rappaport. What I admire about you is that you tend to give very constructive criticism. You tend to be very direct, even though you also support a lot of the programs and initiatives of the government. So I want to hear from you in assessing a lot of these efforts. Of course, we've heard last week and the week before that Grenada was named as the culinary capital of the world. I mean, that's something huge. We know that Grenada, that there is also a drive towards that luxury-driven type of tourism that we see now in the country, which again you've also critiqued, right? Because for you, are we going to be a mass tourism destination now? How are we going to be looking at ourselves? So how would you assess our central government's efforts, the tourism authorities' efforts to reopen the tourism economy in Grenada?
Okay, good morning, and thanks for having me. And good morning to everybody, my fellow panelists, and also everybody listening today, tomorrow, whenever. I first want to touch on some of the points that Natalie made, which I think are some very good points. I think I would agree that this was a great opportunity for us to step back, take a look at things, and see where we're going forward. I think some of the points that Nat brings up are really good points, and some of them are already being addressed. This West Indies School of Hospitality connection with Cornell University, which is going to lead to a lot of training for people in the sector, is a really wonderful initiative. And also some of the programs and the new attractions that the minister referenced. I think, as you mentioned, I've been always one to question how we are being developed and how we go forward. I think it's really important that we have a very distinct product, and I think that one must cherish the product that they're selling to the world. I think we run the risk of, if we're not careful about protecting our product, that we will become just another one of the many islands offering the same product, quite frankly. And so I think this is a time for us to really take some hard looks at those kinds of things. The GHTA for years, I spoke with when I was the president for about 4 or 5 years in a row in my annual speech at our annual meeting about the need for more zoning in Grenada and proper land use. I'm troubled by the size of some of the buildings that I'm seeing going up in Grenada, both vertical size as well as horizontal size. I think these are all issues that one has to take a look at. And the other thing, and I would also echo what the minister said, I think, we have to give the Ministry of Health a lot of credit for the job they've done throughout this pandemic and the fact that we've had the kind of experience that we've had in Grenada compared to what the rest of the world has had. I personally have lost 15 friends to COVID around the world. This is not a joke. And I think the one thing that I personally wish that the Ministry of Health would be a little bit more proactive about at this point in time is to engage the community at large about our overall health as a nation. And we all know that the best way to prevent illness is for us to be healthy to begin with. And I think we have a lot of chronic illnesses in Grenada that are a lot of people deal with. And this is an opportunity, I think, for us as a nation to reassess what we're eating as a nation and how we're living as a nation. So that, I think, is part of the same equation. I think realistically, coming out of COVID, people are anxious to travel again, but they're also anxious about where they're traveling to and what's going to be waiting for them and how safe they're going to be. So the government has a responsibility both to the people of Grenada as well as the tourists coming into Grenada to protect everybody to their fullest extent. And I think that's what they're trying to do, and I applaud the government for doing that.
All right, Mr. Rappaport, Mr. Yorching, let me bring you in here. I actually, in doing some research for the program, you were actually featured in the Caribbean Beat magazine article a few years ago, which highlighted the Pure Grenada Music Festival. Apparently, you're also a musician. So I thank you here. Same question, assessing where Grenada goes from here with respect to its tourism product. Let's hear your thoughts.
Well, my thoughts will be based solely from the layman's point of view. So I will tell you as a layman my observations, not knowing what's happening behind the scenes, as the Honorable Minister was saying that they have several things happening. I've been living here for 31 years, and with the tourism sector, I thought after a while we got stuck in a rut. How long can you offer white sand beaches and coconut trees to people? Without facing some very, very strong competition overseas, as Mr. Talmo said, people will take your ideas and expand them to the point where it will make it more, more pleasurable to go to other places. Unfortunately, the cost of living in Grenada is quite high, and hence some of our tourism activities are very expensive. Hotel rooms, car rentals, meals are very expensive compared to a lot of places around the world. Fortunately for Grenada, we have a wonderful people, and that is what is really and truly, I believe that is a big part of the attraction to Grenada. That word has gotten out worldwide. The people in Grenada are amazing. I've traveled extensively, and I'm always happy to come back home. I'm always happy to tell strangers hello on the street and be acknowledged as a human being alive. That is something I miss anytime I get on a plane and leave. I look at strangers and nod and say hello, and they walk straight past me, and I realize I'm not home. But I'm glad to hear that we have some projects to improve the tourism attraction to Grenada that are happening. I'm sorry to think that in order to open up the tourism sector, we think, or some people think, that the whole of the country has to be vaccinated, or the frontline people have to be vaccinated. I personally don't think that is true. I mean, we have 40% of the university coming in August. We have British Airways and Virgin flights are full, so they say they're full and they're coming in from next week. And none of these people that have bought tickets to come to Grenada, as far as I know, have insisted that all Grenadians should be vaccinated. So they are coming.
So, Mr. Yoching, you are actually preempting the next segment. So stick to that point. No, that's okay. Stick to that point. But Mr. Mason, let me bring you in here, and please convey my greetings to my former colleague and mentor, your dear wife, Sister Eugenie Mason, for me. But Mr. Mason, you know, the unions in Grenada, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here. The unions in Grenada have been pretty, some might say, tough on the government. But what would you say would be something positive that the government of Grenada did to support the hotel and tourism workers during this period? Certainly, there were stimulus incentives given to the hotel sector and by extension your workers. So before we get to the next segment, in which we'll be having a discussion around vaccinations, something that you have been very passionate about, I would like to hear your thoughts with respect to just your view on the way that government treated to hotel workers, because you represent a significant amount of hotel workers in Grenada.
Thank you very much, Kellon, and it's a pleasure to be on a platform. I thank you for the sentiments expressed regarding my wife. I will surely convey your regards. I want to compliment the government on the promptness with which it instituted the closure of the border. I think that was commendable. However, I will hasten to add that to me, the government have not appreciated publicly in their statements and utterances the contribution made by the Grenadian people. I think the Grenadian people did a sterling job in answering the call and doing what the government asked them to do. So much effort is being made to compliment the government, but the government could come up with the platitudes and the dictates, and the people could shake their head and say, nah, I'm not in that. But the people took it on fully. And this is why I'm at a loss as to why they are so headstrong in this one-dimensional approach with the COVID vaccination. So I want to answer your question that I applaud them. They did a marvelous job in instituting the closure of the borders and the subvention that they gave. And I want to also correct you that I'm not fully involved in the membership drive or have much members in the tourism industry, but it's my instinct, devotion to defend wherever I see injustice or the semblance of injustice.
Are you suggesting that there are injustices meted out by perhaps those who employ workers in the sector? What are some of your concerns?
My concern, Kellon, is before the COVID vaccination, Grenada was leading and is still leading in the curbing and controlling of the spread. Though we didn't have community spread, but the question that is always asked, when there was the outbreak, so-called outbreak from Sanders, where there were about 59 positive cases, within a week, every person who was tested positive became negative. The question is, what was done? It was not vaccination. So I'm saying that there are other choices that are available besides the vaccination. Also, our constitution has in it enshrined the right to work. And I've done some research, and I'm not seeing that in many other Caribbean countries, very few. If anything, it may be one other country. So the right to work is here challenged with that perception that one is being compelled. In order to maintain your job, you have to take the vaccination. And I've heard on a GBN Beyond the Healthline program sometime last year, when Doctors Martin and George, together with the minister, were on the program. A caller asked the question, what was done to treat those who were positive cases? And the answer was, we are using hydrochloroquine. That was said last year. So I'm saying right now, Sanders is being asked to vaccinate. But Sanders, for the last few weeks, were doing PCR tests. So there are choices that are available. And that's where I see the problem.
So you're suggesting that there isn't a middle ground here. And you're hoping to see a middle ground between, again, those who choose to be vaccinated as workers, but those who don't, at least you're suggesting that perhaps there should be options for them as well?
I'm suggesting, and I've not said it as yet, my suggestion is, they say the science is saying that 1 in 3 million may have adverse effect from the vaccination. 1 in 3 million. Now, the follow-up question will be, who will be responsible for that one? If that one is asked to, in order to continue working, you must take the vaccination. And in order to adhere to your job conditions, in order to adhere to ensuring that you put food on the table for your family, you decide that you're going to take the vaccination. But you become sick and you die. Who is responsible? And no one is answering that question. Who is responsible if someone decides to take the vaccination and that one falls sick or that one dies? Who is responsible? And that is that is bothering me, Kellon. I have sleepless night on this issue.
And certainly we will take a break. We'll come up for air and then we will get back with the panel. Again, this is the Bubb Report. We thank you for joining us. Please stand by. Welcome back, folks, and that was your headlines for the week. And I'm going to bring in the minister again. Minister, thank you for sitting in there and listening intently. And I'm also going to bring in Mr. Rappaport because, again, with respect to the debate around vaccinations, now the Prime Minister of Grenada, was very clear about the approach, what the approach to vaccination should be. He didn't feel as if it ought to be something that should be mandated. But now we're hearing that hotel workers are required to be mandated. Now, if I can cite a press release, a story that was written in the Now Grenada publication, I'll put it up on the screen here, and I'll get both Mr. Rappaport, who of course is representing the hotel sector, to get their perspective on this. But really and truly, it comes down to a question of to the choice of vaccination or not. So let me share that press release here and that news story so that we can cite from it. Okay, so it says hotels in Grenada that are approved as quarantine sites can have their permission revoked if 100% of employees fail to become vaccinated with the COVID-19 vaccine that is currently available on the island. Now, the release goes on to say government's policy that all employees of quarantine sites must be vaccinated was announced officially in the parliament on Wednesday, 7th July. The same day, a letter sent to the manager of International Branded Hotel from the acting CMO was posted on the social media platform Facebook. Signed by the CMO Charles, the letter dated 6th of July gave the property 10 days for all staff to be vaccinated. Persons in the hospitality industry have confirmed that since May, tourism and health officials have informed them about government's policy for all staff to be vaccinated. And so, Minister, my question to you is, isn't that inconsistent with the Prime Minister's position that there ought to be a choice with respect to the approach to vaccination on Ireland?
No, it's not inconsistent at all. First of all, I must say that there is an existing Public Health Act, which allows the Ministry of Health through the CMO to make such decisions where there is a high risk or a significant risk of a sick person affecting other persons in a particular setting. Then they can make regulations, guidelines, whatever, to prevent that person from going into that setting where they could possibly infect others. So therefore, we have our vaccination program, as most countries in the world, as I think all the countries in our region have, and we have had vaccination levels in the high 90s, and that's why we're not seeing the polios and the measles and all of those things that were common before. So that legislation that is there, it is enshrined in the law, and therefore the ministry, through this scientific information, can make decisions in that regard. And therefore, the government, the Prime Minister, doesn't need to make any further legislation to do that. What we have always angled for, though, is the moral persuasion. So I know the ministry's team, they would have made themselves available to go into workplaces, go wherever they've been asked to go to speak about that. There have been local forums, there are fora. We had in St. Mark, where we invited the public through all kinds of means. And the following day or so, we offered vaccination to those who felt convinced that we needed it. There has been several panels, I don't know if you're aware of that, where learned persons and a variety of persons who did what you do, bring different opinions together. And they spoke to people about it. So it's an ongoing thing. Teams from the ministry go out into the villages, they go to the homes of persons who are housebound for whatever reason, and they vaccinate. So the moral suasion is going. The thing is, and one of the speakers spoke about what happened in the Sandals. What happened to Sanders then is a different situation. And I applaud the ministry again, and I applaud Team Grenada for what they have been doing, and I've always spoken about that. For what they have done, including everyone. However, at that time, and if my memory serves me right, we didn't have those serious variants attacking us. We didn't have the Delta variant so much in our region as well as in other countries. Take, for example, the United States. What they're showing, data is showing that several states where you're seeing increases in the infection rate, all of those states have shown very low vaccination rate as well. So there seems to be, and the science is saying that there is a correlation between low vaccination rate and the spread of disease and hospitalizations and deaths. So the gentleman from the union, Mr. Mason, he spoke about who is responsible if you vaccinate somebody and the 1 in 3 million die. We have another counter question. Who is responsible if people do not get vaccinated and a disease comes out and you have community spread and you have serious spread in a job setting? Who is responsible then? So, and I am not saying that he doesn't have to answer, but I'm just saying that for us to start thinking that it is not just about the union or the workers or the government, but this is a time for Team Grenada when we can come together and find common ground. Look at what the statistics have been showing. Look at what's happening globally. I mean, even the UK opening and giving us the green light, they have been hesitant on certain things. Japan, they're having Olympics, but they are in a state of emergency. So we're in a serious crisis time. And I know you mentioned something to me before about post-COVID. We're not talking post-COVID, you know, we're in the middle of COVID, but we are also in the middle of creating livelihoods. Job is a right, and it's our responsibility to create jobs and to ensure that people stay in their jobs, but it's also our responsibility to ensure that everybody in the job sector is safe, and whoever comes to our country is safe. Safety is going to play a major role in where people go and where they don't go. It has given us a serious leverage with our low numbers, but we have to keep it that way. So I think we need an island-wide, a country-wide discussion, a consultation, and a will to see how we can deal with this whole vaccination issue. And I must say, the vaccine has proven to be the most effective in all of this, in keeping.
But Minister, another concern of John Public in Grenada has to do with the efficacy of the vaccine, and also that Grenadians only have one. Of course, that has to do with what the COVAX facility provides to Grenada. That one vaccine, of course, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, again, you know, there's been concerns about the vaccine and its impact. But I want to bring in Mr. Rappaport. And audience, I have not forgotten your questions. I will get to your questions. I'm going to bring in Mr. Rappaport, and then I'll get back to you, Dexter. But Jerry, I mean, you know, the position of the hotel sector, you as somebody who, you say you endorse this mandatory vaccination effort. Is that the case? How do you balance that against the rights of the citizen not to take the vaccine as well?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is an extremely complex question, okay? And it's something that, you know, we're in a world right now where tourists don't want to travel unless they know they're going to go to a place where they're going to be safe. All right. We have an obligation on the part of business owners to ensure that their guests are safe as well as their employees. Okay. I mean, from the beginning, I can tell you, amongst the hotel owners at the beginning of the pandemic, one of the biggest concerns was not whether the fact that we no longer had business, but how was our employees going to survive with their lack of income. Okay. When we talk about people's rights, I mean, yes, absolutely, everybody has rights, but so does a business owner. And if a business owner realizes that they have to have certain things in place for their business to be viable, unless you're talking about really egregious things, I mean, there has to be some effort made to accommodate those and balance it. And I think there's been so much misinformation about the vaccines. I mean, even in terms of the AstraZeneca in particular, and the issue of blood clots, when you look at the incidence of blood clots related to the vaccine in comparison to the use of birth control, in the use of alcohol, in the use of cigarettes, you know, it's just, there's so many things that we do in life that have risks. They're calculated risks, you know, and that's why we have to use our brains and make the right decisions. But it's no different than when we stand on, and when I'm back in New York, where I was originally brought up and raised, when I stood on a street corner and having to cross the street, you have to take your time and make sure you're crossing at the right time. The vaccines, you know, I mean, as the minister pointed out, the reason why we don't have polio, measles, and things like that in the world to the extent that we did when we were children, some of us were children, is because of the rise of vaccinations. Now, there has been lots of discussions about vaccinations in general before COVID, you know, and the safety of them. And a lot of people, there was a lot of mixed opinions about it. Some people felt that there was too many vaccines being given to children at one time. Some felt that the period they weren't good. But the point I really want to make here is that in medicine, there is always risk in conventional medicine. When you go to the doctor and they prescribe you medication, you may be one of those 1 in a million who have an adverse reaction to the medication. Okay. When you go in for an operation and you have to sign a release in the hospital before they will do that operation, because there's 1 in a million or 2 million or whatever the number is that may not make it through that operation. It doesn't mean that everybody stops having those operations. All right. Because the odds are so much in favor of nothing happening bad. And I think that what's happened with the vaccine is very unfortunate, because there's more conversations being had about people who might have had an adverse reaction than the thousands upon thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who have had no reaction whatsoever. Okay. You know, and you know, when I hear people say things like, well, we haven't heard about all of the people that were sick, got sick from the vaccine. Well, maybe there weren't all that many people that got sick from the vaccine in Grenada. Okay.
Well, I mean, it's the jury's still out on that. I mean, you know,
right,
there is
but
not a significant, yes. Mm-hmm.
Is that people are making statements not based on data. Okay.
I see.
All right.
Okay. So right. So you're saying it's more conjecture here. And let me bring in Dexter. I see Dexter is chomping at the bit to get in here. Dexter, you know, this conversation, because you know the tourism debate in this period, as the minister said, we are still in the throes of the pandemic, but the tourism debate also has to be framed within the context of protecting lives and livelihoods, right? So when we're thinking about vaccinations, it's also about lives and livelihoods as well. So that this is an important conversation to have. So Dexter, let's get your perspective, because you've expressed some concerns as well.
Well, first of all, let's get some things clear. I'm going to center on Grenada. Okay, I'm not going to go globally and internationally. There's too much. It's just too much. First, we know for a fact that the vaccines have not been approved. They're still under Emergency Use Act, right up to 2013, 2014. The FDA would have reasons for doing that. Mainly that the vaccine was not given enough time to be proven and tested. The clinical trials, again, a fact, were shut down because of the adverse effects on the animals that was used. The clinical trials were never completed. In that short space of time between the inception and the distribution of vaccines worldwide, there were no human or clinical trials. There were trials done on 40,000 people, which is minimal. We talk about polio and chickenpox and all the other vaccines that have passed before. This vaccine does not follow that trend. Those vaccines, polio took 40 years to be approved and put on the market. Those vaccines contain isolates from the virus that are inserted into you, they're neutralized. And then your immune system picks up on the isolate from the particular virus. These vaccines have no isolate. In fact, the coronavirus has never been isolated, right? So the manufacturers have stated categorically that the vaccines will not prevent you from carrying, catching, or transmitting the virus. They have stated that categorically. What they've tried to make you believe is that it would help with the symptoms. That's fine. But they have also proven that proven drugs like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and several other things are out on the market that will help with the symptoms. In fact, Mr. Mason said it clearly. We use hydroxychloroquine over here on some of these symptomatic patients at home, and they never had to go to the hospital. Grenada is an amazing example of the fact that we have had 100% success in recovery of the so-called positive cases. And I say so-called because, again, the PCR test is also a big controversy. Why it is we based our protocols on the test, I have yet to wonder about that. But anyway, moving right ahead. My biggest problem with the mandatory vaccination is that there is evidence out there. There are international government websites that are telling you of the thousands upon thousands of people who are dying and adversely affected from this thing. This is not Facebook or social media. Enduro Vigilance, Yellow Page Scheme, VAERS, all have reports of thousands of people that have been adversely affected in the most serious way. There's no rumor of blood clots and deep vein thrombosis and strokes. It's a fact. It is happening out there, and this is being reported on government websites, which for some reason we refuse to look at. Enduro Vigilance is one of the most updated ones up to today. It showed 17,000 deaths in 13 countries in Europe alone. And remember that historically, these websites only report 1 to 10% of incidents. That's the amount they get. Historically, this has been proven, only 1 to 10%. Our next big question is this. They had a vaccine for swine flu some time ago. They distributed 43 million doses, of which 50 people died. You shut that vaccine down immediately. We have passed the 50 deaths flying. And in fact, right here in Grenada, the amount of incidents that are coming out in Grenada, not medically proven, but the coincidences are too great to ignore. Grenada has no incident report website.
Yes. So, Mr. Yaching, I think my question is, where is the middle ground? What would you propose to be as a middle ground and government's approach? Because remember, the point is, again, we're going to be the borders are already open, but there is a push now. The cruise ship tourism season is supposed to be returning for the winter, and there is we have the airlines coming back from the UK. Grenada has been added to that list. What would you propose? That's what I want to hear from you, and then we'll get to the rest of the panel because we have to close the show.
Okay, very quickly. You're talking about proposal as to the vaccination of the nation?
Well, I'm speaking specifically to hotel workers because this is the bone of contention. Yes.
Where we have failed is proper education. You don't educate people about the pros only of something. You educate them about the pros and the cons. So your information, for one, has to be properly researched and correct. There has been no proper education about what could possibly happen. So informed consent is important. Yes, our constitution demands that the workers have a right to work. They also demand that the employers have a right to protect their employees and their businesses. But we could go so far as to go back to the Nuremberg Code, which was brought about in 1945, to stop that atrocity from happening, of which people are convinced that this is the atrocity that is happening now. And all it does is says that this vaccine is still in the experimental stage, right? That is a fact. Because it has not been approved, it is still in the experimental stage. And any experimental medical procedure can only be done with the complete consent, informed consent of the individual. I wish people would read that code because we are breaking 10 out of 10 codes, and that is an international code brought around for the protection of individuals now, right? What happened in Nazi Germany with the Jews?
Yeah. Mr. Yaching, I think we're going down into a rabbit hole, but
one moment.
Yes, quickly, because
yes. Halfway ground is informed consent, also acknowledging that there are other ways to prevent this virus, as per ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, proper health, vitamin D, zinc. The mental health, which suppresses the immune system, must always be good. What was said last week in Parliament is atrocious. What should have been said maybe was, let us start stocking up on these things that might help us, and face this as a nation together. That might have been a more positive move if it was said. Right, but I do know for a fact that there are thousands upon thousands of doctors that are agreeing that there's something wrong here, and we've got to inform people in a complete way and let them make the pros and the cons, and let them make an informed decision to do it. You can't force people into doing this.
All right, Mr. Yaching, certainly you've made a lot of claims here. Again, we do have a doctor on the panel, but Dr. Modeste, that's not necessarily her area of expertise. We will be having a public health panel to address some of those concerns that you raised. But again, I just wish to also make that disclaimer. So let us take a break and we will come back. Mr. Talmo, thank you for laying in wait. We will come back to get some closing comments from all of you. And just stand by, folks. We will be right back. Since losing that seat, what have you been up to? Well, Mr. Attorney General, this particular provision sounds unconstitutional. But why were there not consultations before moving forward with the proposals? Did they say what will happen when you guys get to St. Vincent? Because there are pressing social economic issues that I would want to address with you. In the hyper-information age of social media, the Bubb Report knows there is more to the story. We have questions and demand answers. We strive to hold the powerful accountable and tell an unbiased, contextual story. You know what happened. We let you know why it happened. There is always more to the story. The Bubb Report, streaming every Sunday at 11 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube. All right, welcome back, folks. Let us get to some comments before we get to some closing commiserations here from the panel, who I thank. I know Sunday is sometimes a day of rest for folks. The minister herself is a politician, so there might not be any rest, but certainly public servants also deserve rest. So we want to get to some comments here, and we want to stick to the context of tourism here. Let's get to some comments. Let's look at some comments. Let's see here. So a lot of the comments kept coming in. So Jose Onesta saying, one of the cell in the diaspora of Grenada tourism designated with the carnival and the jab, but seeing there will be no jab, what will we be selling to open our shores? Well, we know that, we cannot have carnival in this context here. Timothy is saying, we are yet to develop a tourism product around the history of Grenada Revolution with museums and sites that tell a story of the revolution. And I see Mr. Talmo is nodding here. I'll get you to respond to that. Let's see. We have Timothy is saying again, we continue to market Grenada as a sun, sea, and sand destination, I'm guessing is what he's trying to say, when many other places around the world, even some closer to our source markets, offer the same at a cheaper cost of travel. The most successful tourism products worldwide are those that are grounded in culture, history, and ecotourism. There you go, Mr. Talmo, I see you nodding again. The minister is also nodding, so there might be some agreement there. It's good to have that resonance. Let's see. Margaret Francis is saying, that's such a great point about marketing places closer to you. Listening to the minister, I get the sense that they think of visitors is the traditional white person. What efforts are being made to attract Caribbean neighbors, for example? Minister, I'll get you to respond to that because I see you're nodding there.
Oh, okay.
Minister? Yes, please proceed.
Thanks. In that one, no. As a matter of fact, we always lament that the Caribbean is no longer our first source market. It used to be very high up. It is somewhere about third. It was when we checked somewhere in 2019. And it is one of our priorities. And we haven't had time to talk about this. I'm aware of the time constraints, but it is one of our priorities. As a matter of fact, and I'm using the word black here, that of black tourism, to bring our own, first of all, our own people in the diaspora back, and our diaspora has served us well. I want to say thank you to the Grenadian diaspora, wherever you are. But also to bring Caribbean people and other people, Africa. Looking at Africa, I know in Barbados they started some flights. I don't know if they started, but they were planning
but
to.
There were talks to have direct flights from the continent, from West Africa.
And I believe that is excellent, because we know you don't have to go all the way to Europe to go to Africa, that you could go across south. Yes, so that is part of our plan in terms of the history and the culture. This is where we are. That's why we're doing the project at Fort George. We have, as a matter of fact, we have digitized almost all of the documents that are on the fort, with that same thing in mind that the person spoke about, keeping our history of the revolution or making it more relevant to people who know or who don't know. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And the culture, these are things that you're going to be seeing. We do have new faces in the management of tourism, and these are the things we're talking about. Mr. Talma, I've taken your name. I'm going to get your contacts. These are the kinds of dialogue we have. But I must say, you have been remiss, because when we do have consultations, we send it out on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, and I have not seen your face. I look forward to seeing you. But some excellent suggestions. Some of them we've already taken on board. Some of them it's refreshing to hear what you've said, and we look to have further dialogue with you. I only want to say one more thing. In terms of clinical trials and so on, and I know you're going to have a public health thing, I just want to say, never before in the history of the world has so many clinical trials being held on volunteers, human beings for whom it is destined. That is one thing I want to say. Secondly, that studies were being done from many years ago, and the number of persons who have volunteered is phenomenal. The number of persons who have taken this vaccine thus far is also, a very astonishing number. So any way you look at it, the science does have merit, and I understand the doubts, I understand the concerns, and I think we need to perhaps do more to inform people so that when they do take a decision, it is an informed decision. And I'm really happy to hear you saying that you'll be doing a panel with public health persons who are going to expound some more on that.
And Minister, speaking of public health persons, we have invited consistently the Minister of Health to appear on the Bubb Report. I'm publicly asking him again to accept our invitation. We are an open platform. We want to hear from all voices. It's important that the Minister of Health appear on the Bubb Report. I thought I would put that out there. But Mr. Talmo, I want you were nodding to some of the questions on the panel that were raised with respect to ecotourism, culture and history. What are your thoughts with respect to how Grenada is doing on that score? Some might say that Grenada is coming up short.
Well, it's obvious, and is in your face. I don't know if I can use that word. Grenada has probably the most beautiful, call it a harbor, secluded. The Carronage is, to me, it gave me goosebumps just thinking about it. Not long ago, I went for dinner into a place called 360, I guess, with a view over the Carronage that I don't even know what I had for food and what I had for drink, because I was just hypnotized by the beauty of what was in front of me. I'm a bit blindsided by these new green lights, but no matter, that could be seen from the space. It's good to be recognized even from the alien when they're going to come and visit Grenada, because to me, out of 187 countries out there, which include my own Italy, Grenada comes pretty top. And all these assets that we have, the forts, which I don't live very far from it. And I don't know if I can say the word, is about time before it collapsed completely. The library in town, the beauty of St. George, the history. Remember, Grenada is probably the last revolutionary place, which, to my personal viewpoint, it has been, together with the sad passage of Ivan, the blessing of this island, which has been left behind by the big tourism corporation, including the cruise ships. Because I don't know, just because I've been sitting down at tables where Grenadians have been seen by the industry as rebellious people, therefore difficult to manage and difficult to put together. And that's why, in a way, Grenada has been left behind in what is so-called the tourism corporate business. Matter of fact, it was only until the hurricane destroyed islands up north that they rushed and realized how beautiful Grenada is. And of course, they wasted no time, to reproduce what they did up there pretty much down here. Not if Grenadians as a whole get together and realize that you can't sell your asset and turn them into liability. On top of the discussion I just heard, I would like to point out that in this particular year, I think it's 2021 or so, where people have been allowed to come, even in moderate to Grenada, I met personally a lot of smart workers coming from America, coming from Canada, coming from England. A personal friend, she ran away from England and stayed in Grenada until they called her back. And they selected Grenada based on how this spread was managed and dealt and the outcome. And that just make you think the power and the attraction that this island have. I often ask Caribbean people, because West Indies is my area, what make you think? Why so much people want to come and see your shores? Why so much people want to take a journey and spend a couple of weeks in Grenada or perhaps in another Caribbean island? That is something that if we ask that question ourselves, we'll be able to answer and eventually address the product for them. And that's personally my viewpoint. The cruise ship is a business. I started on cruise ships, but when I started on cruise ship, I knew immediately that wasn't a sustainable business. And they can build the ships as big as they want, but this ship, they leave every Saturday. Somehow they need to be filled with people. Now we don't really care what kind of people they fill in, because they still come into your shore. So my viewpoint is like, do we really want to work so hard and stretch ourselves so much to make those little pennies and breadcrumbs when we can just reassess our natural economic situation and now be the one that rule the economic table? Where yes, we do want tourism. I love tourism. Tourism has been my passion, and hospitality is my life. But I never wanted to overkill myself, overwork myself, because it's a hard work. Is a work that asks you a lot of sacrifice. It makes you wake up early in the morning. It makes you finish late at night. It makes you give up your holidays. It makes you wake up your weekends. It don't make you see your friends. People that choose to do this job, they making a sacrifice in itself. Somebody said Grenada, it comes a little bit above the medium target price range around the island, which is correct. But then again, I don't see that reflecting the salary of the professionals. I would never be appealed to enter in a career that will allow me to, they make me work so hard, and maximum I can make is whatever my restaurant manager make or whatever my bar manager make. And that's what I said. Like I said before, tourism is important, but if we reassess all our economy, you realize that once you fix your primary sector and your secondary sector, now you need a very little tourism just to make it happen and to make it work the way you like it. And I personally believe it's beautiful having this asset. And I heard that you don't miss your water until your well runs dry. Grenada has still a lot of water to drink. But if we don't, tourism is going to change. Jerry said, I totally agree, tourism is never going to be what it was before. But I like to point out that these people that they choose us to smart work and spend months of their life in Grenada, living with tears, waiting to come back, they didn't choose this island because we were all like vaccinated or were also fearful of this pandemic. They choose this island because they realize this island has, like Dexter said, a level of health which is above the average. Grenadians, they eat healthy. Grenadians, they exercise. Grenada, they lime and they jab and they dance. And Grenada like to be fit. Grenada doesn't really have a greater amount of junk food available for the people. And due to this low salary, that junk food available is kind of out of that price range. To my viewpoint, that made Grenada a healthier country. I mean, if you go Carnival Antigua, please, Antiguans friend, don't shoot. There's very little to see. Carnival in Grenada is beautiful. There is a vibe. There is a.
I take it you like. I take it you like the jab, huh?
Well, I did it once, and I kind of enjoyed it. Yes.
Okay, all right.
But that was my appeal. There's the Grenada appeal that has the potential of having quality over quantity still, until you preserve your asset. I think welfare and well-being of whoever lives in Grenada is supposed to be our priority. How we do get there, that is not for me to discuss, because I'm not in government and I don't run a country. But I believe when I was in charge of my teams, the welfare and the well-being of my staff then turned out to be into success of my operation and to the satisfy of my customer, which bottom line, that what tourism is. And I believe in life in general. If we could choose to live better and feel better, and we have the opportunity, this island will give you the opportunity. Maybe you're going to be a point where you don't have to choose rights over business.
All right.
Because I don't really want to put my 2 cents into that. This is not a name tag. So I don't work for a company, so I'm putting a name tag on. And when I'm done working for that company, I'm taking my name tag off. we've been asked to put something in our body that is there forever, even when we're no longer going to work for their country. That is
all right.
Only my
Okay.
opinion, and I hope
Yes.
everybody's going to use consciousness into this moving forward.
Mr. Talmo, you got really warm at the end of the show, so thank you so much for your contribution. That's okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to get Brother Jerry with some closing comments, then we'll get to Mr. Yachting, and then the final word will be to the Minister of Tourism. Mr. Rappaport, kindly unmute your mic, sir. You need to unmute the microphone.
I wanted to respond first to one of the questions or statements that was made from one of the listeners. We are not in this country just trying to sell sea, sand, and sun. I can tell you for a fact, after sitting on the Board of Tourism for the Tourism Authority for many years and working with this minister in particular, there's been a real emphasis on trying to develop our tourism assets away from our traditional sand, sea, and sun main asset, which is Grandans. Community tourism, I know, is very high on the minister's agenda and will always remain so. But, you know, the other things that, you know, some of the things, my good friend Natalie had a lot to say, and I agree with a lot of what he said. But the one thing I don't agree that he said is that I don't agree with his assessment that that Grenada is such a healthy country presently that we can withstand this virus just because of the nation. I see a nation with a lot of incidences of diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity. I see school children eating junk food every day. All right. I don't see the younger people in this country eating the kinds of food that their parents and their grandparents were raised on. And I think that we have some real health issues in this country. And we need to be very conscious of how this pandemic could affect this country. And I think the government's been extremely good at protecting the country so far. And I think that's what's motivating their desire going forward. And I think it's that same thing that is motivating most of us in tourism. We want to ensure that our properties are safe for both visitors and our staff going forward. And it's a joint effort. Anybody that's lived in this country long enough knows. The government doesn't have the resources to do what needs to be done by themselves. The private sector has to play a role as well as the public sector. It's a joint issue. And there are lots of commonality areas that we can work together, and we need to do so. But I think the most important thing is that we get the right information out there to people. And so that people, like I believe it was Dexter made this point, that people get to as much information as possible so they can make educated decisions, not decisions made based on what they hear in a rum shack from somebody speaking out of the side of their mouth, not from something that they read on necessarily on social media without any substantiation between it, but behind it. But take the time to do your research and learn for yourself. There's tons of information out there in the world. I'm not saying what side you should fall on, but just take the time as an individual to do the research. And I think if everybody in this nation made that effort, we'd be in a much further down the road than we are today.
All right, Jerry, thank you. Dexter, quickly, some final thoughts on you with respect to moving forward with tourism. I know that based on my producer's conversations with you, you're very passionate about the sector, but you're also passionate about citizens' rights as well. So let's get some final thoughts from you on this discussion today.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I agree with there were points in all the panelists that were very valid. Grenada, fortunately or unfortunately, has depended on tourism for a very long time. And yes, I agree, in order to reboot the economy, we have got to get people coming in here. My thoughts are this. People are going to come to Grenada. The Ministry of Health is doing the best it can to make sure that they feel comfortable and safe in coming in. And as I said, judging from the flight loads that have been predicted, people are coming. The students are coming, which is a big part of Grenada's economy. So we should see a boost. By the end of the year, we should see a difference in the economic evaluation of the island. But again, I am passionate about the fact that some people are being forced or coerced or bribed into doing something they might not necessarily want to do out of a lack of knowledge. So let us make a drive. Let us be compassionate and show some empathy to the people who don't necessarily feel that they should be vaccinated to get back the jobs. Let us try to educate them both to the pros and cons, and let us continue to stop the division that is being made on the island between the people who have been vaccinated and the people who have not. I think that at the end of the day, we're going to have to all work together to move forward.
And on that note, all work together to move forward. Dr. Modeste, final comment from you, Minister.
A good note to end on. I am really pleased with the panelists that you have chosen, all having their strong convictions on certain things, but very open and objective in a number of ways. I just want to say that much has been done by Team Grenada, all of us. There is much more to be done, whichever road we take, and that the Ministry of Tourism is looking at its plans. Our focus will be on community tourism, culture, heritage, as said before, open spaces, adventure, all of these things. And I want to compliment Mr. Jerry Rappaport for his sterling leadership of GHTA. And even now that he's not the president, he's doing some excellent work with horticulture. And this is one of the things that bring pleasure and joy to locals as well as visitors. And in that, we will endeavor to replicate what we do in UK so well in the Chelsea Flower Show. I have signed up for his course, for the course organized by him. I hope I can get some time to do it, but that's a really brilliant idea, in addition to some of the other ideas. There are a number of opportunities by organizations like UNDP, World Bank, Commonwealth, and so on, where individuals can get grant funding, as well as government has a very soft loan, very soft, like sponge and cotton sort of thing, that has a long moratorium before you start to pay back, low interest rates, etc. That I will encourage all Grenadians who are interested in doing a business, not just for tourism, but tourism is included, that if you want to start up a business and you want a soft loan, that's the way to go. Encourage all, let us pursue authentic information, because a lot out there is just sensationalism. And you spoke about fear factor. You want to see fear factor, go on some of the media, the different mediums that are available. I'm happy that SGU is coming back. It's going to bring jobs to people again. A number of persons in the accommodation sector has suffered severely because of that. And everybody, the supermarkets, the taxis, a lot of persons, the economic life has been impacted negatively by the COVID virus. I'm happy that SGU is going to come back, and gradually we're going to go back to where we were and build back better than before. But it's going to take all hands on deck. And I noticed all of those who spoke today on that, I'm going to engage them. And I know persons would have made comments, and through your medium and any other, I would like to invite, persons to have a conversation so that we can look at how best we can deliver on tourism for our country as we build back better. And I want to say one word, agriculture. That does not leave out agriculture. Fisheries and agriculture, we will be taking along with us in a holistic way. I thank you for this opportunity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, the Fourth Estate, the media has a very important role to play in also facilitating these discussions, but facilitating these discussions with objectivity and truth. Truth is important, but also facilitating these discussions and digging deeper and beyond that superficial level. But panel, I want you to stay in the green room so that I can connect all of you to the minister, as she has availed herself of the opportunity to connect with you, Mr. Talmo. And I don't know if George is here with us. George, are you there? Yeah, I think George had some connectivity issues. But listeners and viewers, I want to thank you for your participation. Unfortunately, we were not able to get to all of the comments, but certainly during the replay of the program, you can see that. Also, as a programming note, the Bubb Report is aired at the 8 p.m. primetime slot on the Grenada Broadcasting Network in Grenada. So if you did not have an opportunity to catch the program today, you can certainly catch the program when it's aired on national television in Grenada. On behalf of my production team, I'm your host, Dr. Kellan Bubb. Thank you again for viewing and have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.